Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and good morning for some of you, good afternoon for others. My name is Michael Delacorte, alias Mike the Microphone, here to bring you part 2 of Totally Not Furry's amazing fan... God, can't say that with a straight face. No, but really, it is a work of art. It is Totally Not Furry's I'd Like to Be a Tree. Now, for those of you just joining us, I don't know why you join on part 2, so click on the annotation in the top left that says, "Hello, I'm an annotation, click on me." And for those of you watching this video right now, it's not there because I haven't added it yet. Stop being smartasses. Now then, here we go. Part 2 of I'd Like to Be a Tree. After a bit of sanding, the limb had become smooth and sleek. Fluttershy gave the limb a quick peck, and a gust of wind caused the tree to shiver. Fluttershy looked up and raised an eyebrow.
"Do you like it when I kiss your wood?"
she asked with a wink.
"Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. That is, if you don't mind."
Fluttershy quickly spun around, pulling her tail across Bloomberg's trunk and limb. She took the sandpaper in her mouth and put it back in her bags. A steady breeze ruffled the tree's leaves as Fluttershy slowly circled the tree, dragging her tail along the trunk. Fluttershy came back right in front of the shortened branch and sat on her haunches. Bloomberg's leaves rustled as a strong breeze whipped Fluttershy's mane straight back. Fluttershy ducked her head under the limb and slowly licked it from the bottom of the shaft up to the tip. A strong gust thrusted Bloomberg over Fluttershy as the tree's leaves draped over the Pegasus. "Eep!" Fluttershy stepped back as she squeaked. The gust subsided and the tree returned to standing straight up, branches bobbing in the wind. Fluttershy looked up with a hint of annoyance in her eyes.
"Bloomberg, you always scare me when you do that. Now promise me you won't do it again."
Leaves stirred in the wind.
"No buts, mister."
Fluttershy moved her hooves onto her hips. The wind finally died and Bloomberg stopped moving, returning to his upright stance.
"That's better."
Fluttershy returned to her seat in front of the shortened branch and admired it for a bit. Months of sanding had given it an almost perfect cylindrical shape. It was wider near the trunk of the tree with a girth of almost 2 inches. The tip was a little more than half that. The limb was a hefty 10 inches long and sleek, but not perfectly smooth. Fluttershy intentionally left some bumps and ridges along the shaft to give herself the most pleasure. Fluttershy closed her eyes and smiled softly and brought her face close to Bloomberg's limb. She inhaled deeply, his rich scent filling her nostrils as another shiver ran down her spine. She could smell a hint of tree sap. Dots of his thick nectar were beginning to leak from their wooden prison. She could feel him begging for release. The scent swirled around in Fluttershy's head, jumbling her thoughts and widening her smile. A sensual exhale released Fluttershy from her temporary high, while she glanced up at Bloomberg with her suggestive Cheyenne eyes. Fluttershy took the limb in her hooves and began to massage it. Slowly, she began to pepper it with kisses. She started at the tip and kissed all the way down the right side to the trunk. Gingerly, Fluttershy stuck her tongue out across the bottom and slid up to the tip and back down to the base. Fluttershy covered the right side of the branch with an open mouth and slid up, swirling her tongue against the smooth wood as she traveled. She gave the tip a playful bite and could taste a bit of the delicious tree sap within Bloomberg. Fluttershy slid her mouth down the left side of the branch and brought her head underneath the limb, flicking her tongue back and forth as she drew her head out toward the tip. Fluttershy swirled her tongue around the tip of the shaft as her hooves caressed the sides. Slowly, Fluttershy snaked one of her hooves down between her legs. She was soaking wet and incredibly hot as she started to rub herself. Fluttershy rubbed deep into her haunches as she finally took the tree limb into her mouth. Fluttershy started bobbing her head up and down the shaft, sucking hard with every movement. Fluttershy could taste the sap she was suckling out of Bloomberg, which caused her heart rate to skyrocket as she continued rubbing herself with her hoof. Fluttershy started to feel flustered as her body was overcome with heat. She began rubbing herself more intensely, her legs spasming erratically with every circle she made. She also increased the speed she was sucking on the shaft. She worked him for ages before popping him out of her mouth and looking at Bloomberg with her bright Cheyenne eyes. Fluttershy took her hoof that had been between her legs and brought it up to her muzzle. The smell of her juices were driving her wild. The taste drove her even wilder. Fluttershy continued to lick and suck on her hoof, teasing Bloomberg with her eyes. Bloomberg didn't make a sound.
I'll be right back. Don't you move.
Fluttershy gave a quick lick to the tree limb, lapping up any sap she had missed before trotting over to her saddlebags. After rummaging through one of them, she came back to Bloomberg with a Trojan horse condom. Oh, you've got to be fucking kidding me, really? Oh, this is priceless.
Sorry, you know how I always use protection. Still, I hope you don't mind.
Bloomberg's branches swayed gently in the breeze. Fluttershy skillfully rolled the condom down the length of Bloomberg's limb. For this time, Fluttershy had decided against lube. She was so wet that it would be unnecessary. Fluttershy licked her lips as she turned around and stuck her tail in the air, exposing herself to the tree.
Okay, Bloomberg. Let's take this nice and slow.
A breeze tickled Fluttershy's haunches and blew her pink mane over her eyes as she positioned herself in front of the branch. She twitched when she felt the warm tip against her slit. She could hear her heartbeat in her ears. Fluttershy took a deep breath, bit her lower lip, and slowly pushed back. At this point in time, I'd just like to say, if you have a really weird boner right now, you're not the only one. Continuing. The shaft easily parted Fluttershy's moist lips and slipped inside her. Bloomberg's limb became covered in the Pegasus juices as it spread her out wide. Fluttershy gasped for air as Bloomberg filled her up. She took short, sharp breaths as she was overcome with pleasure running through her body. Fluttershy stopped a third of the way down, taking a minute to catch her breath while Bloomberg continued to stretch her apart. Fluttershy continued to push against the tree, driving the branch straight into her wet, tight body. Her jagged breathing slowed as she let her tongue loll out of her muzzle. The sensation of Bloomberg sliding inside Fluttershy's body across her tight walls was making her sweat. She continued to push, waiting for Bloomberg to finally... Fluttershy squealed. The bumps she had left on the shaft had hit her G-spot. Fluttershy reflexively clasped tight around the limb, composing herself to continue and push back into the tree. Her eyes rolled into the back of her head as she started to pant heavily. Fluttershy was now 2/3 of the way down the limb. If she went any farther, Bloomberg would tear her in half. Her heart was pounding through her chest while her entire body felt like it was on fire. Slowly, Fluttershy began to rock her hips back and forth, letting the shaft slide in and out of her at a gentle pace. Fluttershy slid on the shaft effortlessly, her juices acting as the perfect lubricant. She spasmed every time the limb grazed her G-spot while she drilled herself onto the tree. Grunts and moans escaped Fluttershy's mouth as she began to pant. Pleasure shot through Fluttershy's body, blurring her thoughts. As this was happening, a strong wind picked up, causing Bloomberg to start to buck violently back and forth.
Oh, yes. Call me dirty.
Fluttershy panted as she increased her rhythm against the gyrations of the tree. Her tongue flopped around with each push made against the tree, each push accented by a very sharp breath and a loud moan. Her eyes couldn't focus on anything around her as the wind blew her mane straight in front of her. Fluttershy could smell her sex as the wind blew past. Her juices trickled down her legs, leaking out of her with each thrust back onto the tree. The tree branch slid through Fluttershy's body. The bumps rubbed against her G-spot. Each thrust was more pleasurable than the last as a buildup of pressure was starting to develop in her haunches.
Oh, yes! Yes! I am a tree! I'm a dirty tree! A dirty tree! Yes!
Fluttershy barked. Fluttershy abruptly stopped.
I mean, not that trees are dirty or anything.
Fluttershy bit her lip and returned to her steady rhythm. Her body was on fire, her hind legs soaked, her mouth dry from panting, her throat hurt from screaming. She was in heaven. Fluttershy fought to keep her eyes open as she pounded away on the tree. The buildup of pressure in her loins signaled that she was close to coming. The wind intensity increased tremendously, causing Bloomberg to buck even wilder. High-pitched moans came out of Fluttershy's mouth as she made stronger thrusts against the wildly bucking tree, feeling Bloomberg slide in and out of her so forcefully. In just a few more thrusts, she would...
Fluttershy, is that you screaming?
Fluttershy instinctively jumped backwards and gasped louder than she had ever before. Part of this was her being startled by Applejack's voice. The other part was because Bloomberg's entire 10-inch limb was now deep inside her. Fluttershy felt like she was being split in half at the seams. The wind didn't let up as Bloomberg kept bucking to and fro, sending vibrations through the limb, turning it into a natural vibrator. Fluttershy watched in horror as Applejack appeared around the bend in front of her and started trotting up to where she and Bloomberg were.
Oh, goodness, you're okay. I heard you screaming and I thought something might be attacking you.
Fluttershy couldn't respond. She could only stare at Applejack with wide, terror-filled eyes and an open mouth as Bloomberg kept vibrating against her G-spot. The only audible sounds to come from her were the quick, sharp breaths Fluttershy was taking. She was creeping closer and closer to an orgasm with every passing second.
Well, you sure sugar do look frightened. Sweet Apple Acres does get its fair share of mean critters, but they're mostly harmless.
Applejack shared. She walked over to Fluttershy's saddlebags on the ground. Fluttershy could only follow her with saucer-like eyes as her panting became more forceful and frantic. Strong gusts of wind were whipping Bloomberg back and forth, causing the tree to gyrate even stronger.
I sure am going to miss Bloomberg. He's a strong little tree. Always could withstand the harshest of storms without even losing a couple of little leaves here. Well, except for that one storm that took his lower branch.
Applejack turned toward Fluttershy and could see her entire flank bare against the tree. Fluttershy just stared back at Applejack, making unintelligible noises as she struggled to hold back her moans. Applejack looked at Bloomberg, and then to Fluttershy inquisitively.
Say, where is that stubby old branch of his?
Fluttershy couldn't answer the question. She could only pant. Her eyes and mouth were still wide open, and even her eyebrows began to move up and down with her breathing. Applejack wondered why Fluttershy was still spooked. Wasn't having a friend nearby enough to calm her nerves? Applejack looked to Bloomberg, then back to Fluttershy. Then she noticed the smell. Applejack's jaw dropped in horror. When her eyes met with Fluttershy's, they matched them in size.
No.
Applejack looked to Fluttershy's saddlebags, her heartbeat rising. She noticed the Trojan horse condom wrapper on the ground.
No.
Fluttershy was now squeaking with every breath, keeping the same facial expression as Applejack met her look with a face of pure terror.
Fluttershy, no! Yes! Oh, God, yes!
Applejack fainted. And obligatory scene change. Twilight was cleaning up her library to get ready for bed when Applejack burst through the door.
Twilight, I need one of them fancy schmancy spells to erase the last 10 hours of my memory.
Twilight looked utterly befuddled at Applejack, whose face shone pure desperation.
Why would you need... Just do it! Are you going to tell me if I wanted to forget... Ah! My brain! I'm thinking about it again!
Twilight watched Applejack writhe in pain on the floor of the library. She quickly readied and fired off the memory erasing spell, which she had committed to memory after the whole peanut butter fiasco. Applejack's body rose into the air in a swirling purple ball which quickly enveloped her head and dissipated. Applejack fell down hard on her rump and slumped to the side, out cold. Fast forward to morning. Spike woke up Applejack in the morning to offer her some breakfast. Her body ached, her rump hurt, and she was attacked by a massive headache after she opened her eyes. The farm pony fell out of Twilight's guest bed and labored to stand up on her legs. She stumbled her way downstairs and joined Twilight in the kitchen for some oatmeal.
What in tarnation happened last night that I ended up here, Twilight? Why's my head bucking more than a bull at a rodeo? You ran in here last night asking me to erase your memory, so I did. What'd I do that I wanted my memory erased? Even if you knew, would you want me to tell you? Point taken.
Applejack ate her breakfast quickly and painfully stumbled her way back to Sweet Apple Acres. There were still plenty of chores to do before heading off to Appaloosa that week, and Applejack didn't want to leave Big Mac and Apple Bloom with too much when she left. Applejack decided to check on Bloomberg before she got back to the barn.
Well, Bloomberg, you sure are shining today. You trying to leave a lasting impression before you...
Applejack noticed the condom on Bloomberg's lower branch. For a good minute, Applejack stayed silent. Her breathing picked up as thoughts raced through her head for what could have happened the past afternoon.
I didn't...
Applejack reached back to touch her rump. It was sore. She winced from that simple tap.
No!
To be continued. And so concludes this dramatic reading of I'd Like to Be a Tree by Totally Not Furry. I'm going to go shower now because I feel really Okay, bye.